Okay, welcome to this final week of our lecture for payroll accounting. This will be a combined lecture for week 7 and 8. Since week 8 we won't really have a lecture. That week is designed for you to finish up your exam and your payroll project. So what I'm going to go through today is just some recap items and look at a couple of review items and make sure you understand everything to turn in. So what I've got up here on the screen, the class sessions, I'm going to go in here to week 7 and 8. Note this is my course that I had back in the summer, so the dates will be a little bit off from what yours are for this semester. The first thing I have for you, and you'll want to use this, I think this will be a big help for you, is the first thing here is the review for the final. We may go through this in a little bit, but it's simply just some of the main aspects of the course and some of the high points that I want you to know for the final. And so what I've done is I've gone through the final and then tried to put line by line some things that I think are important. This review, this is very similar to it's pretty similar to the payroll project and to the part 2 of the exam. Part 2 of the exam and the payroll project are similar. Part 2, the payroll project is a little bit more in depth. You do October, November, December, whereas just for the exam part, you'll just do 1 month. So the exam part isn't quite as in depth as the whole project is. And then down below this final part 2, I have all of the answers. We'll begin to look at some of this in a little while after I've gone through this overview, but we won't hit everything. And so you'll want to go into this answers for the review, and I have the entire Excel document with all of the answers there. Okay, let's go back now to the item where your test is and the payroll project. So the first thing is doing your final thoughts, the overview of the course, how you like this course, how it went for you, what would you make change, if anything. And then we come here to the payroll project. This, again, you do this at home. The final part 1 is the only proctored part. Now you'll want to verify that with your instructor. I have just emailed her an update telling her that the part 1 is proctored, but part 2 does not need to be proctored. Part 1 is the normal, like what your normal weekly quizzes were like, very similar. Some of the very similar questions, and those that is answered in Blackboard, and there'll be a password there that your proctor form will have, and that they can enter it in when you get to the proctoring center. The part 2 here, you could go ahead and start this just the same time you start the payroll project. You already have access to the documents. They're right here. And then you're simply going to submit your final updated Excel sheet that has all of the answers. So with that said, I'm going to go into, and let's take a look a little more in depth at the payroll project first. So I'm going to close out of this screen and bring up, the first thing I'll bring up is our Word document. Just a second. Okay, got it here. All right, so with this, we've got everything is up here. I want you, as I say here, to use the 2015 Social Security cap. This should be pretty similar to what you've seen with the review document, what you've done in week 6, I believe it was, maybe week 5. The only thing different here is I have these people starting during the year, and even one lady quitting during the year, just to throw in a little difference, just to see how things are going to be done differently. And this will come into play, especially this and the termination with Martha. Notice I made it pretty easy for the extra items that are taken out of each paycheck. It's not real complicated, just some 401ks, medical premiums, and flexible spending accounts. So what you're going to do is do a payroll register for each month of the final quarter, which is a little different than what we've done so far in the course. So you're actually going to do one for October, November, and December, and I'll pull up the Excel sheet in just a minute, and we can look at that. What I've also given you is an updated trial balance as of September 30th. Because if you remember, not every payroll tax is paid every month. Some taxes build on themselves. So when you see the September 30th trial balance, you're going to see items like Social Security and Medicare payable, federal withholdings payable, because those you would pay at the 15th. You pay those by the 15th after the end of every month. And you've got to know how much were in those withholdings before you can pay it. And I'll go over that when we pull up the Excel document. So then each month you're going to show me the journal entries and the extra entries in addition with the medical premiums that the employer pays, as well as the 401k. And then you're also going to indicate by when you actually do journal entries as well. You're going to do journal entries showing that these payments were actually made. So they're made, remember, federal withholding and FICA are made every month, and they're made by the 15th of every month. And I give you an indication here when each of these will be paid. Note, feud and pseudo, we're not going to pay these because these will go into the following year, and I'm stopping this project at December 31. So those will be the two that you'll still have a liability account towards the end of the year. You actually have a liability account from all because of the December 31 payroll, but this one will be the one that you haven't paid ever. And then every time you do make a payment, whether it's to an employee for their paycheck or you're paying one of these, I want you to go ahead and make a note on that. I have a space set up in the Excel as well to show as like a little checkbook summary. And I want you to keep track of every check you wrote, just like you would if you were an accounting firm. So I'm trying to make this as real life as possible. At the end of every month, and so this is where I want you to keep T accounts to know how much is due and how much money you have, how much expenses you have accrued up through the end of each month. So you're going to want to have an opening T account balance that mirrors the opening trial balance that I give you in the Excel sheet. And then, like what we've done in prior projects, I'm going to want you to update and complete the employee's W-2, fill out the Form 941 and the Form 940. Let's go into, I'm going to leave this up so I can refer back to it. You won't be able to see it. But let's go now into the Excel document that I have you start with. Okay. So this is our opening trial balance. With the T account sheet that I provided you there in Blackboard, it's a separate Word document. I would actually go ahead and just print that out. You can do it electronically if you wanted to, but it may be easy if you just wrote it in. And your opening balance should all be in there. So you should have a cash opening debit balance of $150,000. All of these liabilities ready to be paid. And then a couple other items that have accrued throughout this year so far. Of course, your debits and credits that are always balanced. Refer back to your Accounting 101 days if you're not currently in that already. And then, so once we go into October, and you have all of these balances, so you know that when it comes to the October 15th, we're going to have to pay off the federal withholdings, and we're going to have to pay off our FICA taxes. So that's why I have this journal entry ready to go on October 15th, showing that there definitely is a payment that's needed And then if there's any other payments that needed, we would put those in here. And then, of course, our normal October 31 month-end payroll journal entry, since these people are only paid once a month. What I've also provided to you is an update of all of the employees where they're at so far. This 149.5, that refers back to that better always be what your balance is for the wage expense. If you notice the 149.5, there's also 149.5 here as well. So those two better always balance. They should. You shouldn't have one wage expense here and another wage expense on the trial balance. These are our federal wages to date, so these don't include a couple of those items that, like medical insurance premiums that are taken out of your check. Those are not here. And then your FICA wages to date. And then we're going to fill in the rest of it like we normally do, except this is just going to be for the month of October. And we'll go back and use that beginning Word document to fill in all of these amounts. And you'll notice these little stars, too far. These little stars here are telling us that for this employee only, we're going to need to do the long method to determine the federal withholdings, because he makes quite a bit over the threshold for the charts at the back of the book. So once you've filled out all of that, then we're going to kind of give you a starting point here for how I want the checkbook register to look. So your first check 500, we're going to write to the Department of Treasury. And I want you to indicate how much did you pay the Department of Treasury when you sent in your monthly federal withholdings and FICA bill that was due. And then show me each employee, Larry on down, how much did you actually have to pay them and write a check for. And then notice I don't have anything else out here for the month of October. Same with November. I just stop here at the checkbook. But when December comes around, that's where we have all the final totals that need to be put in. So not only do we have the checkbook register, we also have what should their W-2 look like now. When I send those out for Larry, what should be in box 1, and for Keegan and Martha. I also have a space here where I want you to put in, you don't need to attach the Form 941 because sometimes they come across blank. So it's just easier if you go ahead and fill out the 941 as you normally would, but then show me what your answers are here on the form. And it's even best if you show me your work. Show me how you get each of these. And you can just show me by doing an Excel formula. You could say line 2 equals this, this cell times this cell minus this cell. And if I can see that in your work in the function there, then that's just as good as you actually typing it out. And then when you get down here, like what we've done in the past, you're going to want to show me your work on how you got to the October amount, November amount, December amount that was due. And then the last thing I want you to do is fill out the Form 940. Again, show me your work where necessary. And then the final thing that I have you do is provide updated trial balance numbers. Obviously, this isn't updated, the debits don't equal the credits. And so I notice I don't have any of the credits here for the liabilities. Some of them are going to be added to. Some of them are going to be subtracted from when you make a payment. Our wages expense, all of our expenses better go up because we had another payroll. So all of these balances should reflect your updated T accounts at the end of after doing each month journal entries. Okay, I know that was a quick overview, but hopefully you got a good sense on how to start this and just keep rolling with it. Email if you have any problems or you get stuck anywhere. The next thing I wanted to pull up is a review. What you should know for the final. That's not it. There it is. Okay, so some of the things that after I went back through in the exam, some of the things that I pulled out that I think are the most important to know and things that I have hit on the test. So let's go through a few of these, and I'll kind of give some generic answers, and then I'd like for you to actually go in and get the final answers. I don't have an answer sheet to this. I want you to come up with those. So which form is used to report the federal income taxes and the FICA taxes? How often are they paid? Or how often is the form submitted? So remember that form is the 941. That's an important thing that I definitely want you to know. If you go into an accounting office and they talk about reporting payroll taxes, or they talk about form 941, I want that to be in your head, that you know exactly what form that is and that you file that every quarter. So next one here, how often are your taxes actually deposited by the employer? Remember, that's determined by your look-back period, and it could be a couple different items. Most common probably is the monthly for the smaller employers. Remember, it's the 940 form for the FUTA taxes, and they're deposited at the end of every quarter, but only if you are up and over $500 in deposits that you have payable. If you don't, then you don't have to make a payment that quarter. So also know what counts and what's the differences between FICA and federal withholdings for taxable wages. What's taxable, what's not taxable. FLSA, the Fair Labor Standards Act. What does that mean? What does it do? Who does it protect? No, some ins and outs of that. That was a pretty major part. I believe it was Chapter 2. What is I-9? What's the form? What's it do? What's it used for? And then a few other things from Chapter 1. There were, along with the FFLA, there was discrimination, age discrimination in that. There was disability, the American Disability Act. There were a couple other items like workman's comp in Chapter 1. So know a few things about each one of those. What are the, if somebody were to say, what tax bracket are you in, I'd like for you to know what those mean and what those are. So the bottom is the 10%, is the lowest if you pay taxes, 10%, and then it goes on up 15, 25, and so forth. I definitely thought this was an important part of the book, especially one of the chapters, the difference between an employee and an independent contractor. Being able to calculate wages, I hit this on one or two problems. Being able to go back and forth from a weekly wage or an hourly wage up to how much would that be going out to a year if you made the same amount every day for 5 days a week for, if you say, 50 weeks a year. Knowing about state income taxes. Does Indiana have it? How much do they tax? What's provided on a W-2, W-3, and then any of the other informational forms that are given out at the end of every year, like a 1099, whatever one you're looking at, 1099 miscellaneous, 1099-R, 1099. There's a bunch of them. And so just know a little bit about each of those that was discussed there in Chapter 4. Okay, that's all for that. I think we could most likely go ahead and end this. Well, I'm going to go through a little bit of the review that I have out there for you in the practice. Review, payroll register. Okay, so again, this is going to be very similar to your test. Notice we're only going to be doing this for December. This is the last payday of the year. Of course, you'll need to use the tax tables in the back of your book. We're going to do the journal entries. We're also going to fill out the Form 941 and the W-2s. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to leave this up off to the side, knowing that Tricia was hired here in October. Vanessa wasn't hired until November. That's going to be a key point later when we start doing the forms, especially Form 941 and the W-2s, to know how much she has earned, while these other two guys, or these other two employees here, they've been around for a long time. Gross wages per check, that's going to come into play. Let's go ahead and now look at, I'm going to keep this up, but you won't be able to see it. I'm going to pull up the Excel sheet that I have provided there for you. All right. So we've got the first thing we need to do when we're looking at these employees. Let's just clear some of this out. Again, you're not going to be able to see the Word document I have here, but hopefully you have that up to the side. The first thing I want to do is get their total wages from the past up through, and then also put in how much are they being taxed on right now. So if I was going through this, I see Ryan, he makes $11,700. So I'm going to do a formula to have Excel calculate all this for me. He makes $11,700 gross wages up and through 11 months that he's been here. This employee has earned $128,700. And I'm going to do that for Sally as well. I'm going to take the 11,000 times 11 months that she's been here. For Tricia, she's only been here 2 full months as of the end of November. She was here in October and November, so I'm going to take her 3,700 and multiply that by the 2 months. And then for Vanessa, it's just the 3,500. She was only here the month of November. Now what I need to do for the federal wages is I need to take their gross wages, and then I need to subtract out for each pay anything that is not taxed for federal wages. So go back to your Word document, and it says he has $450 taken out for 401k. All right, that's the first thing I need to do. Remember, 401k is not taxed for federal at this time. So what I'm going to do is I need to take out $450 over 11 times because there has been 11 pays. And then I need to see if there are any other items that I need to take out. It says there was $500 taken out for his medical premium. That's also not taxed every month. So 500 times each month. And $100 deducted for using Humane Society as a charity gift. That's not, that is taxable, so we're going to leave that in. There was also a garnishment for child support of $1,500. That's also regular tax. So that's what this is the formula I have for Ryan. So when I tell you to make a formula, this is what I'm talking about. For the FICA, it's going to be just the same as this, except FICA isn't going to include, it's going to actually be taxed on that 401k amount. They don't take it out. So we would have this and then minus only the 500 for medical premiums times 11 months. So FICA wages, 123.2. Note he's already over the limit. So when we get to taxable wages for this individual over here for Social Security, it's going to be 0. So let's go ahead and finish out Ryan, and then you can do Sally, and the other two very similar. Gross wages is 11.7. The taxable wages, well, it's 11.7 minus the 450 for 401k minus the 500 for the medical premium. Social Security wages is actually going to be nothing because we are already over the limit. And then Medicare will be the 11.7 minus just the 500 in medical premiums that were deducted. Remember, for Medicare, they do tax your 401k withholdings. This is the only individual that I'm going to have to do the long method for the federal withholdings. Social Security would be obviously nothing. Medicare would be this. I would simply go this amount times 0.0145. Shows me how much my medical withholding should be. And if it's not coming out to be cents and you want it to, we can easily bring that out as well just by hitting this little 00 button with the arrow. And we can do that for the entire document too. Well, maybe it's just easier to do each one, each little row. So now I got the full 162.48. You'll want to have that. You want to have it to the decimal, to the penny. Okay, I'm going to I'll break it off here, and then I'm going to show you some of the answers and explain how I got down when I did the W-2 part. So let's bring up the answer form now. Okay, so let's go back to where we were. We had Ryan, I already did this. We got our wages. Note this second individual, Sally, not all, just a piece of her wages are taxed, and you can see the formula. Everywhere I have a calculation, always look up to see what the formula is, and you can see how I got it. So I simply took the cap 118.5 minus what she has already earned up through this date, this F6 figure, and that only leaves 35.50 left to be taxed. Now, when it came down to, we got to the journal entries, that should be, you should already be familiar with those. The W-2, so what I've done here, for box 1, simply taking how much they have earned thus far, federal wages up through November, add in this current year's wages, and that's it. Do the same thing for, well, not the same thing exactly, because I know box 3 is going to be capped at 118.5. It can't go over that. Same with Sally here. She went over the cap, so we're stopping at 118.5. Medicare was done the same way as box 1. Go to the FICA wages plus the Medicaid wages, Medicare wages. Box 2, all I did is, since this employee didn't have any changes throughout the year, and they were with the company the entire year, all I did is just take his November amount and multiply it by 12, because it would have been the same every month. Of course, that's going to be different when we get down here to Tricia. She's only worked here 3 months, so whatever she had, just times it by 3. Now, the part that's probably the hardest here is the Form 941. When I get to the federal wages, what I did here, and you can follow the formula, because the first thing the Form 941 wants is your total federal wages for that quarter. So what I did is I took, all right, here's our total federal wages for that month, 27.6. I multiplied that by 3 for the 3 months in the quarter, and then I needed to remember that Vanessa started in November, so one of her pays wouldn't have been included, so I need to back that out. So November and December would have both been 27.6, but the October pay would have not had that 32.50. So that's why I took it out to get my total wages here. I did the same thing for to get my federal holdings for that quarter. Whatever it was for the 3 months, or for the 1 month, times it by 3, and then back out one of Vanessa's pays. The hardest part is probably for this one, line 5A, is knowing how much in wages were actually taxable for Social Security. So not only do I need to remember that, let's go over here. I took the Medicare wages, I'm doing the same thing, times it by 3, subtracted out one of Vanessa's pays because she wasn't here the entire 3 months. And then what I had to do is determine for each employee how much in their total wages, in their total Medicare wages, are they over the cap. Because this FICA number here that I was using, this 28,350, that's okay to use to get a starting point, but not all 11,200 every month was taxable for Social Security, and not all 10,450 was taxable for salary every month. It was for some of the months. So what I needed to go through is back out how much of their entire salary. So I want to know how much has Ryan earned in Medicare wages. So what I would do maybe off to the side is say he's earned $123,200 and he earned an additional $11,200. So that puts me, let's add up these two off here to the side. That puts me at $134,400. And that's kind of what I did here. I took the $123,200, his former wages, plus his Medicare wages for the year, for this month. And then I subtract out the cap. So I have that, let's go back here, $134,400. If you added up these two, you're gonna get $134,400. And then how much of that $134,400 is over the cap? And I found it to be $15,900. So $15,900 of this times 3 is not taxed. Sally had a little bit less. So you can see that in my final formula, I take the Medicare wages, times it by 3, take out Vanessa's 1 month, and then take out what the 2 employees who went over the cap, take out those wages as well. You should be able to go through the rest of this and follow my cells to see what I did. And this should be a big help for you when doing the test and the payroll project. You should be able to use this and refer back to it, these answers. But I would go through and make sure you know how to get these answers before you do the test, because this is going to really help you if you don't understand where a lot of the information is coming from. Okay, I think that will be all for this session. I hope you enjoyed the class, got something out of it. Let me know in those feedback comments. I really do appreciate those. So at this point, we will end the